Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Modi Gambhir. Let's get started. Our top focus tonight is on the Russia-Ukraine war. Have Chinese soldiers joined the Russian war in Ukraine? The Ukrainian president says Ukrainian forces have captured 2 Chinese men fighting on Russia's side in eastern Ukraine. And on Gravitas, we tell you all about what's been said, the latest from the battlefield and where things are possibly headed. And here's a look at what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. What is the latest on Trump's tariff bloodbath? What are things looking like? We decode the latest on the US-China tariff war for you. Where do things stand on the US-Iran nuclear talks? What's brewing and what's the bigger picture? All this and lots more coming up tonight. Our top focus tonight on Gravitas. Chinese soldiers have joined the Russian war in Ukraine is the claim that the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is making. In fact, on Tuesday, Zelensky told reporters that Ukrainian forces had captured 2 Chinese men fighting on Russia's side in eastern Ukraine. Now, this is big. If true, it could potentially threaten the fragile peace effort in the works.
We captured Chinese soldiers on Ukrainian territory. Ukrainians entered the battle in Donetsk region, in Tarasivka and Belohorivka, with 6 Chinese soldiers. 2 were captured.
Remember, China is a close ally of Russia, but is not publicly known to have directly aided in the Kremlin's war efforts. Beijing has also offered to mediate a peaceful solution to the war and proposed a 12-point peace plan in 2023. Writing on X, where he posted a video of one of the men, Zelensky said that Kyiv has information suggesting that there are many more Chinese citizens in Russian units. He said that he has ordered his officials to get a response from Beijing. Now, it's not clear whether the captured men were regular soldiers, and Beijing is yet to issue a public comment. But Zelensky has already made up his mind. He says that Chinese involvement, whether directly or indirectly, is a clear signal that Putin intends to do anything but end the war, it seems. And this comes amid a confirmation of Ukraine's new shock offensive inside Russian territory. Ukraine's 47th Mechanized Brigade has released drone footage showing strikes in Russia's Belgorod region. The brigade said in a Telegram post it was targeting Russian troops gathering in houses. The video was released after Ukraine's president admitted for the first time publicly that his troops have been active inside the Russian territory. Remember, Ukraine's operation in Kursk, another Russian territory where they made a surprise incursion last year, continues. And according to latest reports, Ukrainian troops remain in parts of the neighboring Russian region. 8 months after a cross-border incursion, though Russian forces seem to have recaptured much of the lost territory. Last night, on Tuesday, during his nightly video address, Zelensky referred to the operations and congratulated the unit for its performance.
Commander-in-Chief Alexander Syrsky also reported on the front line, our presence in the Kursk region and our presence in the Belgorod region. We continue active operations in the enemy's border areas, and this is absolutely justified. The war must return to where it came from. Our main objective remains the same: to protect our land and our communities in the Sumy and Kharkiv regions from Russian occupiers.
And despite Russia's recapturing of areas of Kursk in recent weeks, Zelensky has hailed Ukraine's operation as a successful one, in that it drew Russian forces away from the war's main front line, that is in Ukraine's Donetsk region. In fact, he has said that thanks to Ukraine's cross-border operation, the troops have been able to better defend the country's own eastern front line. But questions are still there. Has Ukraine's Kursk operation really helped the country? Did it really take the pressure off east in the front line? Because even though Zelensky defended Ukraine's cross-border operation and hailed the Kursk operation as successful, Russian troops have continued to decimate Kyiv's troops in East Ukraine. On Sunday, Russia said its troops had seized the village of Basivka. It is located in Ukraine's northeastern Sumy region, opposite Russia's Kursk. They were said to be battering Ukrainian forces in different settlements. Meanwhile, the Russian president has repeatedly suggested that Russian forces carve out a buffer zone along the border, and what's more, Russian forces also continue to mount multiple attacks on villages around the eastern Ukrainian town of Pokrovsk. This is as per the admission of senior Ukrainian military officials. On Tuesday, Ukraine's police released a video showing police officers driving through shattered streets and charred buildings. In Pokrovsk, around 7,000 people are believed to remain inside Pokrovsk, which had around 60,000 residents before the war. Remember, Russian forces have for months tried to encircle Pokrovsk, a logistics hub. But Ukrainian troops have so far managed to resist the Russian advances. Pokrovsk is located in the Donetsk region, by the way, and has seen intense fighting over the past year. But geolocated footage tracked by the Institute for the Study of War showing that Russian forces have made marginal advances in south and southwest of the city. So then what does Zelensky hope to gain from Belgorod? Russia's Belgorod, which has a population of 1.5 million, is located close to Kursk. In March, Russia had admitted that Belgorod was attacked by Ukraine. However, the Russian military said they had foiled Ukrainian attempts to cross over into Belgorod. By occupying Belgorod, Zelensky hopes to once again divert Russia's attention away from Kharkiv and Sumy regions of Ukraine. Ukraine, by the way, is also trying to ease the pressure on its other regions like Donetsk. According to reports, Ukraine's operation in Belgorod is much smaller in scale when compared to its raid in Kursk. In Kursk, Kyiv's troops had at one point seized a number of villages, including the regional town of Sudza. Zelensky and his top commander saying that such incursions have forced Russia to redeploy troops from the Donetsk region, where Russian troops have been making steady advances in recent months. But a number of war analysts have questioned the military experience of Ukraine's operations on Russian soil, and they have pointed to high combat casualties and weapon supply difficulties. As far as talks to end the war go, it's unclear where they stand right now, but with the operations in Belgorod, Ukraine hopes to hold on to as much Russian territory as possible so it can exchange the occupied territories for future ceasefire negotiations. Remember, currently Russia controls about 20% of Ukraine's territory. Will Ukraine be able to achieve its objectives in Belgorod? And to what extent will it help Ukraine's case in any future peace talks? Only time will tell.
that China, first row, China, 67%.
We now take a close look at the tariff war between the United States and China. A lot is going on. This is where tariffs are the weapons and the average Americans appear to be the collateral damage. US President Donald Trump is threatening an additional 50% tariff on Chinese imports unless Beijing backs down from its own retaliatory measures. But China is not blinking. In fact, it's hitting back, promising to quote-unquote fight to the end.
The actions of the US side have not demonstrated any genuine willingness for serious dialogue. If the US truly wishes to engage in talks, it should adopt an attitude of equality, mutual respect, and reciprocity. If it persists in disregarding the common interests of both countries and the international community and insists on escalating the trade and tariff conflict, China will, as always, fight to the end.
Now, this is not just another political standoff across the Pacific. This is a full-blown economic standoff between the world's two largest economies that are deeply intertwined. For China, the US is a top market for electronics, machinery, furniture, toys. For America, China buys massive volumes of oilseeds, grains, aircraft, pharmaceuticals. But before we go any further at this point, it's important to understand how we got here in the first place. Last week, US President Donald Trump slapped a 34% tariff on Chinese goods, adding to the tariffs he had already levied earlier, bringing the total tariffs to 54%. And Trump did not stop there, by the way. In a post on his Truth Social account, Trump warned that if China does not pull back its 34% retaliatory tax, he will pile on an additional 50%, pushing the US tariffs on Chinese imports to 104%. And China responded with immediate countermeasures. Besides Beijing announcing a 34% duty on US imports, it suspended shipments of poultry, bone meal from 6 American companies and blacklisted 27 US firms. In fact, China placed export curbs on key rare earth elements, prohibited exports of dual-use items to a dozen US entities. According to experts, China has been prepared for such a scenario. According to them, Beijing has diversified its markets, ramped up domestic consumption, and developed supply chains that don't rely heavily on the United States market, and hence is retaliating with equal measure. But the question remains, who is the one likely to be impacted the most by this trade war? It's the average American, after all. According to economic researchers, the cost of Trump's tariffs for American households could range anywhere from $4,000 to $8,000 per year, impacting their weekly groceries, education fees, monthly utility bills, among others. And with families living paycheck to paycheck in a way, feeling its impact first and the worst, the cost of everyday staples from oats to bananas is expected to get higher. Imported electronics, clothing, toys, even auto parts from China will become considerably more expensive. The US does not just rely on Chinese imports for phones or toys, building materials, textile, critical household goods also flow in from across the Pacific. And according to experts, replacing such products by simply producing them in America is not that straightforward. It's not that easy. It will take decades to rebuild domestic supply chains for such products, adding that even if such a scenario does exist, inflation would be inevitable. American businesses are rushing to secure alternate suppliers. Others are preparing to downside. That means layoffs are on the table, and American jobs are at risk. So is this trade war with China looking less like a tactical move and more like a strategic blunder by Trump? Or is it the other way around? China is not collapsing under these tariffs for now. In fact, its stock markets bounced back earlier today. The Hang Seng Index surged 2%. The Shanghai Composite gained 0.3%. The blue chip CSI 300 index climbed 0.2%. US stocks have also opened higher, setting the stage for a rebound. The Dow rose 1,360 points, or 3.6%. The broader S&P 500 has also gained. So here we are, two economic giants locked in this high-stake battle. One is threatening, the other is retaliating, and vice versa. And caught in the crossfire is the average consumer, who did not, of course, start the fight, but appears likely to pay the price for it. The question still is, who blinks first? Will the White House reconsider its policy? Will Beijing double down? We'll have to wait and watch. Let's now focus on Trump's tariff bloodbath and what the aftermath is looking like at this point, zooming into Bangladesh specifically, with Mohammad Yunus formally requesting the US to postpone 37% tariff on Dhaka for at least 3 months, in return pledging to increase imports of American goods on agricultural products and liquefied natural gas. In a statement, Yunus's office reportedly said, and I'm quoting here, the pause would allow Dhaka to smoothly implement its initiative to substantially increase US exports to Bangladesh, quote unquote. The statement was reportedly an excerpt from a letter sent to Trump by Yunus. Trump's tariffs are expected to have a major impact on Bangladesh's textile industry. The textile industry is the cash-strapped country's major lifeline, estimated to account for 80% of its exports and contributing to around 11% of its GDP. In regard to the US, Bangladesh is America's third largest clothing supplier after China and Vietnam. The letter by Yunus reportedly states that Bangladesh was the first South Asian country to sign a multi-year agreement to import LNG from the US and is in the process of expanding trade in multiple sectors like agriculture, energy, technology, specifically pointing out to increasing the imports of cotton, wheat, corn, and soybeans from the United States. Furthermore, Bangladesh has also agreed to reduce tariffs on US export of gas turbines, semiconductors, and medical equipment, with Yunus's office stating that in South Asia, Bangladesh maintains the lowest tariffs on most US goods. So the question still is, will the US agree to Yunus's request? Or does Bangladesh need to brace for further economic impact? That remains the big question. Let's now talk about the dangers of fake news. Yesterday, we witnessed a $6 trillion swing in 15 to 20 minutes. This was due to an unverified news item. The White House had to come out with an immediate clarification. Rumors of President Trump considering a 90-day tariff pause sent the American markets in a dizzy, naturally. The hope of a pause sent the markets into a buying spree. A typical herd behavior followed. The S&P 500 added over $3 trillion in market cap. The White House swiftly issued a clarification, calling the 90-day pause as fake news. Immediately, the market went south, shedding all the gains it had gained a few minutes prior. In fact, in today's hyper-connected world, misinformation can spread like wildfire, causing unprecedented chaos and damage. This phenomenon highlights the power of fake news in today's digital landscape as well. Social media platforms, with their vast reach and speed, can amplify misinformation to catastrophic levels. In the context of global conflicts, such false reports could have far more sinister consequences. Imagine a fake news story about a country announcing a surprise attack. It could trigger a war as nations react impulsively to perceived threats. With tensions peaking in West Asia and the ongoing war in Ukraine, misinformation can lead to a cascading sequence of actions with horrifying consequences. In an era where information travels faster than ever, the responsibility lies with both the information disseminators and the consumers as well to ensure that truth prevails over falsehood. In what came as a surprise announcement, US President Donald Trump said that the US and Iran were poised to begin direct talks on Tehran's nuclear program. But Iran's foreign minister has said that the upcoming discussions in Oman would be indirect. Direct or indirect talks have been scheduled in Oman April 12, and they will come after days of warmongering between the two countries. Trump's announcement is a surprise, as Iranian officials had seemingly rebuffed US calls for such talks. Iran had pushed back against Trump's demands that it directly negotiate or be bombed, though it had initially left the door open to indirect discussions. Listen in.
Is it possible to give us some more information at what level the U.S. is represented?
High level, very high level. Yeah.
And
we're dealing with the Iranians. We have a very big meeting on Saturday, and we're dealing with them directly. You know, a lot of people say, oh, maybe you're going through surrogates or you're not dealing directly, you're dealing through other countries. No, we're dealing with them directly, and maybe a deal is going to be made. That would be great. It'll be really great for Iran, I can tell you that.
Warnings by Trump of military action against Iran jangled already tense nerves across West Asia. And why shouldn't that happen? Just look at the state of affairs in West Asia. In Gaza, in Lebanon, the continued military strikes on Yemen, Israel-Iran exchanges of fire. Iran's foreign minister, in fact, posted on X that indirect high-level talks would be held in Oman, but he rightly said that it is as much an opportunity as it is a test. On Tuesday, Iran's state media said the talks would be led by Arakchi and US presidential envoy Steve Witkoff. The intermediation will be done by Oman's foreign minister, Badr al-Busedi. The US and Iran held indirect talks during former President Joe Biden's term, but they made little, if any, progress. The last known direct negotiations between the two governments were under the then President Barack Obama. He spearheaded the 2015 international nuclear deal that Trump had later abandoned. Now Tehran says its nuclear program is wholly for civilian energy purposes. But like US presidents before him, Trump has said that Iran cannot be allowed to develop a nuclear weapon.
If diplomacy fails, is the United States under your leadership ready to take military action to destroy the Iranian nuclear program and remove this threat?
I think if the talks aren't successful with Iran, I think Iran is going to be in great danger. And I hate to say it, great danger, because they can't have a nuclear weapon.
No wonder then, Iran seems to be approaching the weekend talks with the United States with little confidence in progress, it seems. According to news agency Reuters, Iranian officials still have deep suspicion over US intentions. Trump has repeatedly threatened Washington's old foe with military action, but that is if it does not agree to a deal. And Tehran would want to see concrete moves from Washington before any face-to-face talks between Iranian and US officials. So does that mean Tehran is looking for lifting of some sanctions as a goodwill gesture? That is what reports seem to suggest, at least. Meanwhile, the talks have been welcomed by Russia. Remember, Russia has previously offered to help facilitate talks between Tehran and Washington. On Tuesday, the Kremlin spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, said that Russia has backed either direct or indirect talks between Iran and the US as a chance to de-escalate tensions. The Kremlin official said, and I'm quoting here, "We know that certain contacts, direct and indirect, are planned in Oman, and of course this can only be welcomed because it may lead to a de-escalation of tensions around Iran," quote unquote. On the same day, Russia's lower house of parliament ratified a 20-year strategic partnership with Iran, a sign of the deepening military ties between the two sides. Ultimately, efforts to settle a dispute over Iran's nuclear program, which it says is purely for civilian use, but America sees as a precursor to an atomic bomb, have ebbed and flowed for more than 20 years without resolution. What will come out of these talks? The format of the talks remains unclear, so we will have to wait and watch to find out. A Russian spacecraft safely took American astronaut Jonathan Kim along with 2 Russian cosmonauts to the International Space Station on Tuesday. A flight hailed by Moscow as an example of successful Russia-US space cooperation. The Russian Soyuz rocket blasted off from the Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, docking 3 hours later with the ISS. Kim and the Russians were shown smiling and hugging their companions on the station, which now has 10 people on board. Take a look. And before we go on, here's a quick look at what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. We tell you why America is placing long-range surveillance drones in Japan. We tell you what's brewing and why these developments are significant. Can AI be used to predict wildfires? What does research say? We tell you. Women in Iran are shelling out huge amounts to try and fix what some call the Persian nose. We get the complete story. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is reportedly pushing the US to halt a proposed arms sale to Turkey. Specifically, Netanyahu has been pressuring the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio to block the transfer of the stealth fighter jets to Ankara. According to a report by Middle East Eye, which cites senior Western officials, conversations between Netanyahu and Rubio have reportedly taken place over several private phone calls in March and April. At the center of Israel's concern is Turkey's expanding footprint in war-torn Syria. The Israeli government fears that if Turkey acquires advanced fifth-generation fighter jets like the F-35, it could shift the regional balance of power, especially in the skies over Syria, where Israel has long operated with relative impunity. Well, the F-35 is not just any combat aircraft. Manufactured by Lockheed Martin, it's a stealth-capable, multi-role fighter loaded with cutting-edge sensors, radar jamming technology, and the ability to deliver over 8,000 kilograms of armament. It can hit targets more than 2,000 kilometers away, flying at speeds of up to 1,900 kilometers per hour. Israel knows this firsthand. The F-35 has become the linchpin of the Israeli Air Force. These jets have spearheaded strikes deep into Lebanon, Yemen, even Iran, which is precisely why Netanyahu is now reportedly lobbying hard to keep this aerial advantage exclusive to Israel in the region. Netanyahu views Rubio as a critical ally in this effort. Rubio has long maintained an aggressive stance on Turkey, particularly under the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. With Rubio now serving as the US Secretary of State, Israel reportedly sees a window of opportunity to stop the sale dead in its tracks. Netanyahu says he spoke directly with Trump in their meeting at the White House on Turkey's ambitions in Syria. Netanyahu stated that he does not want Syria to become a launchpad for attacks against Israel.
We also discussed the situation in Syria. We've had neighborly relations with Turkey that have deteriorated, and we don't want to see Syria being used by anyone, including Turkey, as a base for attack in Israel. Turkey is a country that has a great relationship with the United States. The president has a relationship with the leader of Turkey. We discussed how we can avoid this conflict in a variety of ways, and I think we can't have a better interlocutor than the President of the United States for this purpose.
Trump offered himself as a neutral mediator, pointing out to his friendly ties with Erdogan as a possible diplomatic bridge. These developments come amid increasing Israeli concerns over Turkey's growing involvement in Syria, particularly its support for the HTS-led government that overthrew Bashar al-Assad in December. And since then, Israel has conducted multiple cross-border air raids and limited ground operations to prevent Syrian forces from establishing any permanent presence near Israeli territory. Recently, Israel also accused Turkey of creating Syria as a de facto Turkish protectorate. So will Netanyahu be able to block the F-35 deal? More importantly, will the Trump administration agree to Israel's demands? That remains to be seen. As tensions rise over a potential Chinese attack on Taiwan, the United States military is preparing to station multiple long-range surveillance drones in Japan's Okinawa prefecture, a strategically important area close to Taiwan. This deployment is part of a broader move by Washington and its allies to push back against the growing presence of Chinese drones in the region. In fact, on Tuesday, Japan's defense minister announced that MQ-4C Triton drones will be deployed in the coming weeks to Kadena Air Base, which is a key U.S. military facility on Okinawa's main island, produced by Northrop Grumman. The MQ-4C Triton drones can fly at over 50,000 feet, stay airborne for more than 24 hours, and can cover distances of up to 13,700 kilometers. That's 7,400 nautical miles. The U.S. had previously, briefly, stationed 2 of these drones at Kadena last year, between May and October. In a 2023 statement, the U.S. Air Force hailed Kadena's location as crucial for conducting intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance missions, and for giving access to key hotspots across the Indo-Pacific. Japan's defense minister also indicated that the new deployment is a timely measure as Chinese military activities have increased near Japan's southwestern islands. He said, and I'm quoting here, "The security environment around our nation is growing more dangerous," quote unquote. Remember, China has been escalating military pressure around Taiwan, an island that Beijing claims as part of China and promises reunification, even if by force, if required. Now, Chinese drones have started venturing closer to the Japanese territory as well. Nakatani has noted that around 30 Chinese drone flights were recorded in 2024, a major jump from just 4 flights in 2021. He said that Chinese drones' operational range has also expanded noticeably and that some drones are now flying far closer to Japan than ever before. Since April 2023, Japan has also observed drone activity between Yonaguni Island and Taiwan, a path previously not used by Chinese forces. Additional drone flights have been tracked off Amami Oshima in Kagoshima Prefecture. Back in February, the Japanese government also revealed its first ever contingency plan to evacuate citizens from islands near Taiwan in case of a war, and Japan's emergency measures involve using ships and aircraft to move an estimated 110,000 people off 5 islands in the Sakishima chain, all part of Okinawa Prefecture. What's more, Tokyo also plans to start conducting evacuation drills from April next year to prepare for such a scenario. The looming threat of a Chinese military operation against Taiwan has driven Tokyo to reinforce security across its outlying territories, amid fears that they could be drawn into a regional conflict. And Japan's worries are not unfounded. China has stepped up military actions targeting Taiwan as part of its defense strategy. Tokyo also reportedly plans to install surface-to-air missile systems on Yonaguni, which is again a remote island just 100 kilometers from Taiwan. According to local media, this Japanese island already hosts a Japanese military base and is now building temporary underground shelters, reportedly stocked with supplies to last 2 weeks. Japanese media has also recently reported that the government is looking to station long-range missiles in Kyushu, which is a southern island. Coming back to Okinawa for now, the Japanese prefecture is home to nearly 50,000 American troops. Okinawa would play a vital role in any emergency involving Taiwan. Elon Musk has completed his first 100 days in the Trump administration, which also means 100 days of him heading the White House's Department of Government Efficiency. What do Americans feel at this point? US citizens in various parts have graded the world's richest man and the department led by him from a range of A to F, while some called it fantastic, even praised the department for the efforts it has taken to cut down corruption. Many slammed it as inhumane and disgusting. There were some who vented out their frustration, in fact, at Musk's leadership, with one of them calling the department the worst thing to ever happen to our country, quote unquote. But how did things reach this point? US President Donald Trump, remember, created the department with an aim to streamline government operations, cutting waste and slash federal spending. And as per the department's social media account, the task force led by Musk is said to have saved billions of dollars by cancelling diversity, equity and inclusion contracts, among other expenses. As of March 27, on its official website, the department claimed it has saved close to a total of $130 billion of American taxpayers' money, reportedly. Musk's department is also rife with controversy, be it mass firings or severe cost-cutting measures, and the latest being the accusation leveled against the department of snooping on US federal workers using AI. In an exclusive Reuters report, the department has been charged with using AI tools like the AI chatbot developed by Musk himself to allegedly surveil on at least one federal agency's communication. By now, you would know about Donald Trump's threats regarding the Panama Canal. He wants the U.S. to take control of the canal. He's made that quite clear. And now, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is in Panama to meet with the country's leaders. And this is after the Trump administration complained about alleged Chinese interference over the operations of the critical shipping lane. Hegseth is expected to participate in bilateral meetings during a security conference, and this is in a bid to reportedly advance efforts in strengthening partnerships with Panama and other countries in the region. And then there is Trump's constant insistence on taking back the Panama Canal. Trump claims Panama charges excessive tolls for U.S. ships to pass through the canal. He has called them ridiculous, very unfair, quote unquote. And with that backdrop, Hegseth's visit is significant to say the least. In fact, Secretary of State Marco Rubio traveled to Panama in early February to reportedly pressurize the country into curbing China's influence. Meanwhile, recently speaking at a press conference in Panama City, the Comptroller of the Republic of Panama indicated that the Hong Kong firm in charge of two key Panama Canal ports, has flouted the terms, and Panama did not receive $1.2 billion it was owed under the port's contract with it.
To conclude, I believe this is a very delicate matter. As I said earlier, the people from the Panamanian Maritime Authority at that time, when the renewal took place, wrongly used an audit by the comptroller, which stated textually that substantial compliance with the basic obligations of the contract had been achieved.
Que se habían hecho.
This could trigger huge economic fallout to the effect of around $1.2 billion, reportedly. Remember, time and again, the United States has said that the presence of the Hong Kong firm to operate ports at either end of the canal is a threat to its national security and the region as a whole. Hexted's visit has naturally triggered a lot of speculation about what lies ahead. What happens here onwards will be very interesting to watch. Scientists have successfully brought back genetically engineered wolves that resemble the extinct dire wolf, sparking both awe and controversy. It's an astonishing feat of genetic engineering, but should we be playing God, as it has been said? Take a look.
They ruled the Ice Age. Now they're back. Scientists have revived the legendary dire wolf, an apex predator. Unseen for 13,000 years is back. It's not a fantasy. It's not fiction. It's happening right now. These are the Romulus and Remus having DNA that biotechnology company, Colossal Biosciences, says closely resemble that of the extinct dire wolf.
So, yes, they have slightly genetically modified wolves, maybe. And that's probably the best that you're going to get. And those slight modifications seem to have been derived from retrieved direwolf material. Does that make it a direwolf? No. Does it make a slightly modified gray wolf? Yes. And that's probably about it.
These wolves were larger and more robust than their modern relatives, the gray wolves. They roamed across the Americas before extinction wiped them out around 9,500 years ago. Colossal's team extracted ancient DNA from fossils, including a 13,000-year-old tooth found in Ohio and a 72,000-year-old skull fragment from Idaho.
To de-extinct something would be to bring that evolutionary lineage back into existence, and that would cause a gap where that species was, there's a gap when it isn't, and now that species exists again. What they've done is use genetic engineering to make a gray wolf superficially resemble a dire wolf, or at least what we think dire wolves might have looked like, because we're not really sure what that is either.
These three genetically engineered wolves are now trotting, sleeping, and howling in an undisclosed secure location in the U.S., according to the company that aims to bring back lost species. But not everyone is celebrating. Ecologists and ethicists are sounding alarms about tampering with evolutionary history. Reintroducing extinct species, they argue, could disrupt delicate ecosystems already under stress from human activity and climate change. There's also the question of what comes next. If dire wolves return, will mammoths follow? Saber-toothed tigers? What safeguards, if any, exist? Well, Colossal says it's just getting started. The company has plans to bring back the woolly mammoth by 2028, the age of resurrection. Science has begun, sparking awe, fear, and fierce debate. What was once the domain of myth and fiction is now reality. However, the question is, what new foreign components are created in the genetic process? The concerns go well beyond ethical boundaries.
These days in Tehran, many women with bandaged noses can be seen on the streets. In fact, it's testament to the popularity of a nose job or rhinoplasty. Women across the country are spending thousands of dollars reportedly in a hope to fix what some call the Persian nose. Individuals of Persian or Iranian descent often have a nose featuring a slight hump or a defined tip. The characteristic feature has come to be known as the Persian nose. And in a country where women's bodies are heavily policed, the beauty industry has become almost entirely centered on the face, thus fueling desire for flawless and sculpted noses.
This issue is not unique to our country. It is prevalent across the Middle East. In many Arab nations, nose and facial surgeries are highly popular. Culturally, this trend may be influenced by the hijab, as there is a strong emphasis on enhancing facial beauty.
According to the International Society of Aesthetic Plastic Surgery, over 264,000 cosmetic operations were performed in Iran in 2023, with rhinoplasty being the most common. Many Iranian women who undergo rhinoplasty report higher self-confidence, increase in social standing, and enhanced perceptions of success.
Well, my self-confidence has increased a lot. I like myself a lot more. The reactions I got from people around me after my operation, who now tell me that I've become prettier, have a big impact on my self-confidence.
However, rhinoplasty surgeries also come with several risks. Iranian authorities have repeatedly warned about increase in unauthorized clinics performing such cosmetic procedures. In February, a dozen unlicensed practitioners were arrested from a hospital in Tehran. And in 2023, 3 women died in a single day during cosmetic surgeries, reportedly. But the demand for rhinoplasty and other surgeries remains high.
After all, surgery has its own complications. But in my opinion, if the surgeon is good, you can trust and go ahead with your surgery. If I could go back, I would have even done the procedure earlier. That is, when I turned 18.
Artificial intelligence can do a lot of things, but can it predict a natural or a man-made disaster? More specifically, a wildfire. Researchers think that it's possible. A European Climate Research Institute is using AI to more accurately predict the probability of wildfires around the world. In fact, the institute has created a new probability of fire model, which uses machine learning methods to analyze a wider set of data for more precise predictions on locations where wildfire could possibly break out. This could be a breakthrough, as historical methods of fire forecasts using the Fire Weather Index have their own set of limitations. The AI-driven model can even go beyond just predicting fire danger, but also determine if a particular region is prone to be scorched by it.
In some ways, it's a step change in fire forecasting, because we're really going from suggesting where fire danger might happen, where there's the potential for fires to exist, to saying this is where we think fires will actually exist. And for that reason, it's quite a large leap forward, I think, in terms of fire forecasting.
As you know, cases of wildfires globally are pretty rampant. Case in point being the devastating wildfires in Los Angeles, which killed 28 people and damaged or destroyed nearly 16,000 structures. Or the recent wildfires in South Korea that killed at least 30 people and razed thousands of buildings, including historic temples. Imagine if AI could foresee this. Many lives could be saved, more resources could be allocated to tackle the crisis in a timely fashion, and perhaps the scale of destruction could also be minimized. Brian Johnson, that's a name you might be far too familiar with by now. On Gravitas earlier, we've been telling you about his bizarre initiatives to stay eternally young, some of which also seem to have backfired, but now almost in a self-admission. The tech entrepreneur turned biohacker has said something shocking. Not only has his experiment to stay young backfired in a way, but he might have accidentally sped up his aging process.